Well, I have a little Peppy update for you. I know, actual news.
Yeah, okay, don't overhype this.
Yeah, it's a minor Huntsmen Dump, I guess.
Yeah. Woo. Ooh. Third degree, the third degree net podcast. Third degree net podcast. Third degree net podcast. Third degree net podcast.
Third Degree is brought to you by Soccer 90. Soccer 90 is your source for all things FC Dallas, U.S. national team, and international club gear. Everything from jerseys and scarves and tees and more. And all Third Degree listeners get 25% off all their awesome stuff when they use the code Third Degree at checkout at soccer90.com. Well, hello there, FC Dallas Curious fans. Happy New Year to you, and welcome to another episode of Third Degree, the podcast. Hi, it is me, Peter, and it's just me and one other fella, because one other fella is out traveling around gallivanting about the country. It's just me and your hero, my hero, editor, founder of ThirdDegree.net, the good Buzz Carrick. Come in, Buzz.
Hi, Peter. How are you? As you say, Dan is at a wedding, I believe. Not his wedding, but a wedding somewhere.
Who gets married this time of year? What's going on with that?
I think he said it was in Tennessee, so Tennessee people apparently.
Oh, okay. I think we all know what he's saying there. I think we all know exactly what's happening there. Okay, Buzz, I think this is episode, 142? Here we are. It's the end of the year. 2022 is nigh upon us. MLS clubs are making moves left and right here and there. But for our team, it's just Pepi. That's all we get these days.
Well, I'm actually afraid that people are going to get Peppy burnout. Because
I'm raising my hand. I'm so burned out on Pepe. Just go, for Christ's sakes. I don't even care anymore where it is. I don't care. Literally, you could end up in a Turkish third division. I just don't give a shit anymore. Just go.
Well, I have a little Peppy update for you. I know, actual news.
Okay, don't overhype this.
Yeah, it's a minor Huntsmen Dump, I guess. It's basically, I've checked with people that I know. I don't have a super tight Peppy in, but I know people. So I've checked around a little bit. And basically what I have confirmed is what we've been saying, which is, for sure, yes, 100%, FC Dallas wants to keep him for at least this year. 2, Pepe, yes, 100% for sure, wants to leave now. And 3, don't believe everything you read on the internet, because nothing is really very close. So I think that, we're in the holding pattern, at least until the window opens. I think that it doesn't seem like something's about to happen. So it reinforces the idea that a lot of this noise is coming, I think, from Pepe's agents. I don't know that for sure, but that's what it seems like. And basically everything is exactly as we've been saying, which is, the stuff we've been saying for 2 months now. So nothing is new. Nothing has changed. Nothing's about to happen. He's not about to go anywhere. He's been in town here training with some other people that play for FC Dallas or used to play for FC Dallas, keeping fit, ready to play. So that's where it is. Nothing's happening right now.
Okay, that sounds like a really awful recipe for the month of January. If they want to keep him and he wants to go, those are two conflicting desires. And, I'm very confused as to, let's just talk about the club side of it. I know in theory they'd love to keep him, but how serious do they really think that is likely to happen? And on Pepe's side of the coin, I know he wants to go, but how much of that is actually Ricardo, specifically the player, and how much of that is his agent and family just, seeing dollar signs?
The impression I'm getting from the people that I know that know him is that it's more of a he'd like to go, that he is not necessarily like angry about it yet. And on the FC Dallas side, they're pretty strongly wanting to hold on to him. I'm sure, and that it's true, that there is a price and that somebody has yet to meet it. So I agree with you that there is a point at which it becomes messy, and that'll be after the point at which Pepe gets angry but he's not a particularly, I find in my dealings with him, a guy who gets mad about things. He's kind of a head down kind of grinder, you know. You know how he is.
Yeah.
So I mean, there for sure will be a point where he's pissed off, but I don't think we're there yet. I think most of the pressure is coming from the agent and or his people, whatever you want to call him, side. Pepe's the kind of guy that would let other people handle all that stuff and just sort of go about his business. That's the way I find him to be. And he always has been that way, you know? So I think we're a ways from it getting nasty. I don't think that's going to be, you know, right now.
All right. So is all of the recent outpouring of Wolfsburg news, I think we are all, is that your general opinion that that's essentially just noise generated by his agent and not necessarily anything new or indicative of a pending deal?
Yeah, the new hit, I think, is not indicative of anything. Because we first heard about Wolfsburg, was it like a month ago maybe that first came up? I think that Wolfsburg is definitely interested, and I believe the people that have reported that there's a negotiation and that it has advanced. I do believe that, but I don't think advanced is the same as close. And in particular, like when I asked was when all that Wolfsburg stuff hit again a couple of days ago. And that's when somebody told me, don't believe everything you read on the internet.
Right.
So I think for sure this new Wolfsburg thing is a push from his people to remind everybody that that was sort of the most advanced thing. Because every time there's been a team that's come in for him or had a discussion about him or asked about him, the agent has proceeded to talk about it. You know, so I think we've heard of almost every team that's called. You know, so there's definitely some teams out there that are for sure interested. Wolfsburg, one of them. I just don't think we're anywhere near the hunt price and or what it's going to take to get this over the line.
Yeah, see, I'm just trying to read tea leaves and read between lines and stuff, and it something seems weird to me that if the best thing that his agent can continuously push out as a narrative to mainstream media to get people like Fabrizio and Jeff Carlisle and Tom Bogert to all report on it is Wolfsburg, just seems weird to me. And especially when you're starting now to see stories about Castellanos getting attraction from different clubs for about $15 million. You know, all of these ideas that people have in their head that Pepe's worth 15 or 18 or 20, I just think is ridiculous. And I really want everybody to be prepared for the reality that he ends up going somewhere and the club only gets like $8 or $10 million for him with some sort of sell-on fee.
Yeah, the reason I say 15 when I talk about him is because that's a fat round base number. I 100% agree with you that it'll be more like 8 to 12 depending on how much of a sell-on percentage they get. And that's the kind of thing that with FC Dallas in particular takes a lot of time. You remember, if you go back to the Bryan Reynolds situation, he agreed to contract numbers with Juventus, and then Juventus called FC Dallas, and Roma started with FC Dallas. And from the first time that we heard that Roma was interested in him to when they actually got the thing done was like a month and a half. So Dallas really likes to drag out these things in terms of trying to get as much percentage as they want. So for me, that's the thing that's going to take the most amount of time.
Yeah.
You know, you remember the original Wolfsburg report was that he had agreed to terms with them. And now it's a month later, and that's still where we are. And talks have, quote, advanced. Well, that just means that maybe somebody gave a little bit in terms of how much money they're asking for. And it's funny to me, it's a red flag to me that the only team we've heard of with that level of commitment, everybody else we've heard of is just like, oh, so-and-so is interested, not they've agreed to a term or they're negotiating with Dallas. That we haven't heard that, I don't think, of with anybody else. So all these things to me are reasons why Dallas still has a lot of leverage with his long-term deal, and they're going to hold firm on what they believe his price is.
Well, I also think, if you're going to call it a red flag, the red flag is that it's not yet January, and it's not yet the second, third, and fourth week of January, and so everybody just needs to settle in and buckle up and grab some supplies, because this, I mean, if this was to get announced within the first 10 days of January, I'd be shocked. I think it'll go down to the wire, because I do think there will be other clubs that come in and put deals on the table that Dallas will consider. And I certainly hope that Pepe and his people will look at other opportunities and try to determine not which one is the most lucrative or the most flashy, but which one is the best situation for him professionally. And I think back to the Bryan Reynolds passing up on Club Brugge opportunity to go to Roma instead, and we see where that got him. It for me, at the end of the day, watching this is pretty interesting because I think we all should admit we're relatively novice at the global market of sales of players, right?
Of course.
And I think that we all have a lot to learn about this process. And there's still so much to happen, and everybody should just stop making assessments and opinions on how much they think he's worth because the market's going to fluctuate wildly over the next 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah. You remember, this as well as anybody, that there are teams that negotiate with the player first, as Wolfsburg clearly has done. And then there are teams that negotiate with the team first, like Roma did with Bryan. They went to FC Dallas first and then to Bryan. So every team does it differently in their process. And as you say, the window doesn't open until January. So to me, if Dallas was convinced they were going to sell him and knew they were selling him, they would try and go as fast as possible because their camp opens January 16th and they're going to want to get going on whatever they're doing next year. I agree with you that it'll take the whole window or not at all because they don't want to sell him. So they're going to push hard to get the absolute maximum amount they can. And so if something does happen, I think, like you, I think it'll be really late in the window or they're going to hold him. So that's where I think we are. And I think we'll hear a lot more noise when we get into January. People will start leaking even more stuff as actual teams come to the table with legit offers, more than just this called and interested kind of thing.
Certainly, it is fun to watch, although at this point it's gotten a little bit tedious and boring, and we're getting at the point where people online are starting to yell at each other about it and be very insistent that their position is correct, and we're too early in the process for people to be steadfast on this stuff. It's just, but if I guess I'm going to be hypocritical and say I still think there's almost 0% chance he's playing for Dallas in 2022.
Yeah, I felt that way before, but the more I hear Dallas push back, the more I think it's less than that. Now, I'm still holding at 50-50 either way. But as you say, I'm fascinated by this process. I do think people are starting to get tired of it. It's because they started talking about this, his people did, months ago when the window wasn't even going to open until January something, whatever it is.
Yeah, I do wonder how much Ricardo is going to regret or look back on and appreciate his decision to hire somebody so relatively new to this process as an agent.
Yeah, that's a good question. I actually think that what I know of Ricardo says that he doesn't really pay a bunch of attention to it. That he kind of just lets other people do it, other than like a macro level, they'll tell him when it's really close and the numbers are there. And part of that probably is why I'm hearing, don't believe all this stuff you're hearing, because he knows differently than what's in the media, obviously, and is mostly a guy that just lets people do what they do, and he's going to do what he does.
All right. Have we heard anything else on the potential sale or moving on of Jesus? Is that anything come of that? Because that kind of popped up as a weird little flare-up of concern several weeks ago, but I haven't heard anything about it since then.
I think most of that concern was coming from us because of the fact that Jesus had a remarkable season as well. I think it's weird. I've been reading these end of season assessments of Dallas and where they are, and all they talk about is Pepe. And I'm like, dude, Jesus had a phenomenal season, and y'all aren't even talking like he's good or anything. So I just think that that concern came as he was getting back into the national team, which of course raises profiles and gets people to pay attention who may not have paid attention before, and he came back with a really nice season. So, and when you combine that relative to Paxton, say, for example, Jesus's family background is international, and he has those dual passports and other options and ability to move. So I just think that there's a much easier road and a much more mercenary mentality in Jesus than maybe in some other people. And he's a guy who I know has levels of ambition. For him to have the season he did and get back in the national team, I think changes the profile and makes it where you might need to worry about him. And his agents are very experienced and very savvy and will not make a lot of noise until they're pulling the trigger. It's a very different vibe from them.
I've seen a lot of people online starting to chirp up with concerns about the fact that the Dallas hasn't made any moves. It feels like to me this is pretty much standard operating procedure for the Hunts. They don't tend to do a lot of deals early or fast, and everything tends to happen very, very late in the deal. Am I remembering this wrong, or should we be freaked out or disappointed?
No, you're 100% correct. And a lot of teams making moves were doing stuff internal to the league. Because as we've talked about already in this show, the window's not open. So people get frustrated that Dallas doesn't do anything in the league, but they don't. They don't have any players that have been in the league with somebody else. They hired a coach like a week before Christmas. So no matter what you celebrate, the holidays slow things down and offices are closed and all that kind of stuff. Things don't happen a lot over Christmas and the week after Christmas before New Year's comes around. So the coach got hired a week before that, or two, or whatever it was, and then he went to national team camp. So to me, I would have been shocked if they would have announced a player, because I think that if you hire a coach that late, you have to at least give him a look at the players that you may have lined up to play. And I also think that it's not particularly fair to a coach to have him coming in blind. Now, he can watch tape. Excuse me. He can watch tape, but that's not the same as actually getting your hands on players and getting in training with them. And I actually think that there's a component of this of, let me get camp going and give me a week or two into camp, and then I'm going to tell you where I'm so clearly desperate that you get somebody for me fast. Go ahead and line up like 5 or 6 things, and we'll sort of see how it goes. So I think that's where we are. I think we're in a process of watching as much tape as he can get his hands on. I think we're in a process of him, going with staff over things like their metrics they have and the data they have. And so I honestly think that they might go into camp with multiple open roster spots. Now, I think they'll go ahead and sign any homegrowns or whatever like that they need to do. Keep in mind, they're also hiring our North Texas coach right now. We'll come back to this in a minute. So it won't shock me at all if you don't see, I for sure don't think you'll see one this week. Maybe you might get 1 or 2 in early January, but I think they'll honestly leave a couple of spots open as they go into camp and get a couple of weeks to look at what they have before they go, okay, yes, do it, pull the trigger, get this guy in or whatever.
And a lot of that, I assume, just based on the fact that, it's money, is a lot of it's going to depend on what happens with Ricardo, right?
Yeah. Selling Pepe or not will drastically change what your needs are, because either you have to replace him or you have to put Jesus in his spot and replace Jesus. Now, there are multiple ways you can do it, but certainly the amount of money you have available will change, perhaps drastically. Certainly, like what your needs are is going to change, perhaps drastically. So yes, selling Pepe will dramatically change what you're doing. So again, there's a reason why you wait a little bit on your potential biggest moves, perhaps, because if you want to because replacing him directly was going to require like a DB level player, probably. They do have 1, maybe 2 open DP spots. They do have, I think it's 4 internationals off the top of my head. I don't remember. They have 5 or 6 senior spots and 4 supplemental spots. I mean, they got to find 10 players. So you'll begin to see a little bit of movement, but it's not going to be all 10 next week. They're going to go into camp with some openings.
All right. Well, then that leads me to this question, which is, if you and I are correct that the situation with Pepe is a trigger for what other things they do, and we're also correct that it's not going to happen until late in the window, that really kind of goofs up anything they might potentially be able to do in terms of inbound purchases, because if they wait that long to sell Ricardo, what or who or how much time is going to be left for them to do anything?
Not a lot. Thankfully you have a long season. This year you're going to have start in February and go all the way to November because they spread it back out. And the other side of the coin will be that because it's the middle window for everybody else, almost anybody you're looking at is going to be in shape and going to be fit because they're going to come out of the middle of whatever season they were in. So your worry there is actually that by the time you get to the end of your season, there'll be some burnout because they'll have gone like a year and a half, full tilt. So it'll actually probably be part of the goal to maybe not bring guys in right away and give them a little bit of time give them a little bit of a break to sort of, so they can sort of reset themselves, almost have like a mini off season, and then come in and get fit and get acclimated and get into the team and that kind of stuff. So it's going to be weird because they're getting a late start with the late coach hire. Other teams that have to play in CCLs and whatever's are going to have to hit the ground running really fast. Dallas will have the luxury of not doing that because they don't have any other tournaments to play in other than the Open Cup, but everybody does that. The first couple of rounds of that are kids or whatever,
right.
So I don't think there's this big hurry actually with this team. When you have a new guy, he honestly is going to, not even just camp, really there might be a school of thought that the first part of the season is almost going to be a throwaway in a lot of ways because he's trying to figure out what all he has, which is weird because we already talked about how bad the back end of the schedule is. So he may not have a lot of time, but when you have a new coach, you got to give him time. You can't expect him to turn it over overnight.
Speaking of which, have you spoken to Estevez yet? I still don't remember which one it's pronounced.
Yeah, it's not like the actor, Estevez.
All right. Estevez.
Yeah, I have not yet. He went on the radio the other day and said some things, which we'll talk about in a bit, I think. But
no, go ahead. What did he say?
Well, it was an interview he did with Owen, Owen Newkirk, and they specifically asked him. I didn't listen to the whole thing, but they specifically said, "Where would you look to improve the roster?" And his answer was, and I'm paraphrasing: goalkeeper, center back, right back, and center mid were the key positions they needed to do something with. So those align pretty closely with what we know from, where the deficiencies have been in defense. They've only got one goalkeeper left. So that one's obvious. Center back, they a bunch of old guys and a bunch of dudes under contract. And so, they let Brisson go. That clearly is a place that needs to be better, even if it's just getting healthy. Right back, other than Emma was pretty good. The other two options were not. So that seems pretty obvious. Center mid, we've talked to death about the fact that I think the 6 wasn't good enough, and they let Acosta go. They obviously didn't think he was good enough. So those are positions that align with what we've been talking about. How much money they want to spend on those spots are to be determined. We're going to find out. It's interesting that he has a list already, even without seeing more than just tape. So he's obviously getting a lot of input from current coaching staff. He did retain a couple of coaches. And no mention at all of forward. So again, not like we're going to find out at forward. It was not even mentioned. So all plans seem to be keep Pepe again, weirdly, but so it gives us a little bit to chew on and sort of backs up what we had already thought. And it gives us things to look forward to in terms of what might be coming. So some of those positions, I think they're okay with the kids that they have there. Obviously goalkeeper, they for sure need people, and those other spots, maybe it'll be more about depth. So we'll find out how much money they spend in a given spot. Will tell you a lot about how bad they think that given spot is.
All right. Maybe I shouldn't be surprised that he didn't mention wide attacker, but here we are.
Yeah. You're down on Obrion, but stat wise, he was okay. I'm actually surprised he didn't mention it at all because, we've talked about wanting to move Paxton in the middle. And even if you like Shun, he's going to be gone a lot. Khalil, we don't know a lot about yet in terms of MLS level of play. So even if you did nothing else, you at least need some bodies there and some depth there, because Dante Seeley's not coming back. So I'm surprised that wasn't brought up also. But I'm afraid that it means that if depending on what formation he's playing, Jesus might be a wing. Right? Mm-hmm. Paxton might still be a wing if they upgrade in the middle and don't put Paxton back in there. So he may think that he has on paper enough good talent at wing if he plays 4-3-3 instead of the 4-2-3-1 that Dallas did last year.
All right, you spoke of Dante Seeley. Any word on what his situation is, along with anybody else that are on loan or otherwise? Yeah,
I'd like to go through the 4. I have 4 guys written down that are either on loan or recently sold that are worth, sort of checking in on, I think. Seeley's doing, I think, the best of them. Out of 20 games, he's played in 16 with 8 starts for PSV Zhong. I think that's how you say that. And he has 5 goals, which is second most on the team. And he's done that in half the starts of their top scorer. So those are some pretty exciting attacking numbers. I'd like to see him start more games, particularly for we're talking about a guy who was mad he wasn't starting here. So I think it's a good solid start. I think as you carry forward over this season, you'd like to see that number go up, over the back half of the last, I assume, roughly 20 games that they'll play. You'd hope that he would get up close to all of them, starting all of them rather than just half of them. But good position and good start for him.
All right. What about the other fellows?
Well, Bryan Reynolds is the one that you brought up that's in a tough spot. Now, I have enough context with Bryan that I know that he's content and he likes being at Roma and thinks he's learning a lot. The club still, I think, likes him. But come on, you and I know enough about Jose Mourinho that dude is never going to play Bryan Reynolds, right?
Right.
I mean, he doesn't like Americans. He doesn't like kids. And he doesn't like attacking defenders. He likes defense first. So, there's no way Bryan Reynolds is going to play for that guy. So it's not surprising that, that there's all these reports about how Reynolds may be up for a loan. Yeah, 100%, dude. Take it. Go on the loan. Get it wherever it is. Make sure you're going to play if you go there. If it's Bruges or if it's a couple of these Premier League teams that have been, or championship teams that have talked about you, wherever it is, I think that it's important to get out and get playing for that kid. Because even if Roma likes him, which I hear that they still do as an organization, they're not going to need you for a couple of years as long as Mourinho's still there. In a couple of years, Mourinho's going to be gone, and then you can be brought back into the fold. Hopefully having been a starter for a couple of years somewhere and really done some things, or expose yourself enough that you get bought by somebody else. What you don't want to do is stay there at Roma. And this is just my personal advice, is you don't want to stay at Roma and spend the next 3 years not ever playing. Because it's not like they even put him down in their U23 team either. I mean, he trains full time with the first team, and is fully involved in all that stuff, but he's never going to play for Jose.
No,
we all know that.
He's wasting away. And I mean, that's probably an extreme way of saying it, but it's certainly not helping his situation.
No, not at all. And I'm sure that his people know that. I mean, I know his people know that, and they don't want to burn any bridges or be malcontents, I'm sure, either. I mean, no one wants to get that rep. But at the same time, it's like, I need to play. I need to play. Mourinho knows I need to play, but we all know he ain't going to play me. So Let's figure out where I can go play. It won't be back here, certainly. It'll be, but it'll be somewhere. They'll get him in the second-tier league that he can play. That'll be fine.
Okay. I'm sure I'm forgetting about other people.
Thomas Roberts
yes. Young Thomas Roberts. What's up with Tommy Poo?
He another situation where the club really likes him and in fact really wanted to protect him and bring him along slowly because they think he's going to be this.
Which club?
The club he's out in Austria.
I thought you meant Dallas. Okay, I'm sorry.
No. The club in Austria. Now his loan runs out in May, but they're acting like they're going to keep him. And I know there's some other clubs that are actually tracking him too. So he's now made 5 sub appearances in the league, and he keeps getting more and more minutes. As he now is doing the things that they're asking him to do in whatever system they play. I don't watch their games, so I couldn't tell you. But, he's taking their coaching and progressing, which is a good sign. And they're moving him into the lineup more and more and more. Now you want to look for when do the starts come? Can he get on the score sheet with goals and assists, which is where he was when he was here. It's the same thing. You need to see some numbers coming with the play. But, for all the stuff I get on him is that the club is really, really high on him and his upside and his future, and they really want to keep him and developing him. So I think he's in a good situation. We'll just see what happens come May when his deal runs out, because there is no buy option in that deal. That'll have to be redone.
Okay.
And last one is Tanner. Tanner's the last one that I can think of, unless you want to think of somebody else you want to ask me about. I haven't talked to Tanner's people in a little bit, but he's only made 3 starts made 12 appearances out of 19 games, which is a little less than you would like. And they also just signed a mid-20s or lowish kind of 20s central midfielder too, from, I can't remember where he's from a big club. I can't remember where it was. Maybe it was even Bayern Munich, now that I think about it. So that's a little worrying for Tanner. Now, Tanner and Busio were part of their, long-term development because they're both just 18 or whatever. So, but still, when they bring in a guy that plays the position you play, he's an 8 specifically. that's not good for the amount of playing time you're going to get. It's likely to go down and not up. So probably not what Tanner would like. Hopefully they're talking to him about development and long-term, and you're going to go this and this and this over the next few years or whatever. Because otherwise Bucio's really come on for them and done really well and is, back in the national team, and it has not gone that way for Tanner. So not quite what you would want. I'm hoping to get some more info on how he's feeling about his situation.
Yeah, his move to Venezia always was confusing me. I mean, I'm a big Tanner Tessmann fan, but man, that just felt like a little bit too far of a leap for where he was. I mean, he wasn't even getting regular starting time for Dallas, so the idea that he was going to get it for a Serie A team just always seemed a bit of a stretch. And another one of those deals, and I think about this all the time with the Pepe situation, is that, man, I just feel like that based on what little I do know about this process and based on my observations of all the players that have left Dallas over the course of the last however many years, dating back to Breck Shea and before, people making smart decisions about where they land have far more to do with the long-term effect on their career than any kind of stats or anything else. It's so critical to make the right decision on this very first round. And we could just sit here and do an hour-long podcast just on all the players that made really crummy decisions on leaving to go somewhere because of the flash and the money, and it ended up just crushing them,
Yeah. I always say that you want to go a place that you're really wanted, but there's a difference between the owner saying he really wants you or the technical director saying he really wants you and the coach saying to you, I really want you. You're going to be one of my 2 right backs. That's completely different, particularly when the coach changes when you arrive. You can look at, I think Weston McKennie is a great example of not over jumping on your first thing. Schalke is a great club, but it's not Bayern. It's like there's room to move at Schalke and develop and get into the team. So those intermediate steps are key. Reynolds, you and I talked about the entire time, man, Bruges might be the better choice because you're going to play at Bruges.
Yeah.
And there's other choices, these Juves and these Romas. It's like, you're not going to play there. You're going to have to go out on loan. And I think that he probably felt like he was going to play at Roma, except that they changed coaches on him, and that's,
but
then you don't know what the world you're getting.
But that's the frustrating part, Buzz, is that we're just all layman fan types, and we all knew the coaching situation at Roma was super wonky, and it wasn't likely to be the same guy in 6 months as it was when he signed. And we all knew the Juventus opportunity smelled cool, but wasn't probably the right position for him. I mean, look, you've got the Bryan Reynolds story, and then you got the Aronson story. Kid leaves Philadelphia, goes to a smaller league, gets a ton of playing time, and now look at him. He's an absolute world beater, and he's going to end up in a much bigger secondary move. Bryan takes the flashier opportunity, I assume. I'm basing this off just kind of what I've heard from you and read in other places. Chose not to go to Bruges, chose to go to Roma instead for whatever reason. And now he's really under the gun to make sure that whatever this next move is for him, assuming that Roma will help him do that, and won't just force him to sit on the bench for however long his contract is those are 2 sides of the same coin. And man, that's why when I hear all this Pepe stuff, and I see the Wolfsburg thing, I just think, oh no, that's a terrible place for him to go.
Yeah, Dante Seeley actually, I think, is a really good example of taking the right sort of tact, I think, because he wasn't a starter for FC Dallas. So you're like, why is he going? But part of it was that it wasn't the idea that he was promised anything with PSV, the first team. He knew he was getting this concrete, excuse me. He knew he was getting this concrete opportunity with PSV Jong, and that he would be playing this large amount of games. Maybe I would like it to be a little more than he's actually getting, but he's going there with this idea that, like, we're going to put you in the 23 team and you're going to be the guy. We're going to play you a ton. You're going to score a bunch of goals because in 3 years we want you to be on our first team. That kind of laid out plan and like specific, like, you're going to be on this team, you're going to play this much. Now nothing is guaranteed in life, of course, but Seeley seems to have made the choice of going to what is effectively a reserve team, and because he knew, I assume he knew that the opportunities were much more concrete and laid out, and that he would be guaranteed a certain amount of opportunities, and he clearly has gotten them. And that's a team too that has guys come back from PSV back and forth. So it's a lot like North Texas, a lot of bounce, and he's just with them and still is their second leading guy. And I think that says a lot.
Well, anybody else we need to update in terms of player movement or blah, blah, blah?
I can't think of anybody. There's some small internal FC Dallas stuff like the Nkosi Tafari isn't now a senior team player and not a reserve team player, so he's no longer roster protected. That'll make it harder for him. Not that it's going to be hard for him at all. I do wonder about a couple of the homegrowns that they have signed the last year or two that I'm a little worried about in terms of where they fit into the whole thing. But it's pretty straightforward. We're just waiting for the new coach to see what he's going to do. I don't think there's anybody out there out on loan or sale that we need to talk about. But I can't think of anybody. Those are the only ones that really are mysteries. I mean, everybody else that's gone is like way gone, like Maxi Urruti or Mauro Diaz or whatever. I mean,
Urruti moving to his third Texas club. He finished the Texas hat trick, right? Now
was it John Arnold that made the joke about forever that will be known now as a Maxi Urruti, and Fafa Pico's done the mini Urruti, which is just two teams. I thought that was a good joke.
Yes. Yeah. Good on you, John. That is a good one. All right. I don't know if there's much else to talk about. I guess North Texas is also looking for a coach.
Yeah, they are, of course, because Eric Quill went to Columbus and joined their first team staff. I know that Michelle.
Were you surprised by that? Did we know that was coming, or did we assume that if he didn't get the Dallas gig, he was going to split?
I did. I knew that if he didn't get either the Dallas gig or a spot on the FC Dallas roster as a coach, that he would take a chance on another club's coaching roster. He and I had talked about it. So I knew that was going to be happening, that he had an opportunity out there. I didn't know what it was or of course nothing's 100%, but I knew, just generally speaking, he was looking for the next step to improve his resume, to move up from North Texas in whatever capacity that would be. So with the idea that like, I want to be an MLS coach. So what can I add to my resume to be an MLS coach? In a way, like the same as Lucci taking the assistant job with the U.S. Soccer, trying to broaden his resume, trying to broaden what he has on there. So I'm not surprised at all. Pretty sure it was going to happen. I did think there was a chance he'd be on the first team here, but that didn't come to fruition. So in terms of replacing him with North Texas, I know Michelle has interviewed for that position, who was Quill's assistant. He used to play for Dallas and has worked in the academy some too. And then if you want to go internal candidates, obviously Marco Ferruzzi could possibly be up for it. He does want to coach again. Chuy Vera would be a good choice probably. He's really good at developing kids and bringing them along and that kind of thing. And then there's one academy coach I really, really like named Alex Aldaz. He's the U15 coach. I think really highly of him. So I think he's been Quill's assistant also. So I think he'd be outstandanding. So those are the four internal guys I think that are up for it probably. Michelle for sure is, I know, but or at least interviewed.
Is there any what are the odds that they'll hire somebody from outside the family?
I mean, I can't. That job must pay very little, relatively speaking. I was surprised that they went outside for the senior team coach, and so the factor that we have to take into account is, who does he want to coach North Texas? Because I'm sure he has input. So, in that sense, maybe we might see an outside name. It'd be hard for me to think that of Dallas, who likes to develop coaches internally as well, that they wouldn't give that spot to an internal guy that they've been trying to develop, whoever that is. Or Marco, if you're trying to make Marco happy and let him stay in town or whatever, Marco certainly has worked with players and developed players for years and years and years. So he would be a good fit there if he wanted it, We'll see. It's not as important as FC Dallas, of course, but if I had to bet, I'd say 80% internal, just for grins.
So was it yesterday we started seeing, because this is when we talk about what the Hunts are going to do and everything, the news that Toronto appears to be prepared to write massive checks.
Yeah.
The idea that they would sign 30-year-old Lorenzo Insigne for an amount of money per year in salary that Dallas essentially spends in their entire wage bill I really do wonder. I wish I could be a fly on the wall when Clark Hunt reads that headline. And what must he do when he sees it? Does he just blow it off and go, okay, whatever? Or does he immediately pick up the phone and call Don Garber and go, what the F is going on?
The second one, I think. Yeah,
you think he just blows it off?
No. Calls Don Garber.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because there are definitely two schools of owner. There's the old school owners who are afraid of the league when it found it, remember the league when it found it, remember how precarious it was. And then there's the new school owners that want to go crazy. And there's the same vibe as actually is in the NFL, believe it or not, of which Clark Hunt is the leader of the old school NFL owners versus Jerry, the new school NFL owners. Same vibe. Clark's the leader of the old school owners in MLS, the guys that are more conservative, that push back hard against all the spending, push back hard on keeping a salary cap, push back hard on keeping all these rules to keep salaries down. And then there's these new school guys that want to go crazy and spend the money. And they actually have put in rules to try and incentivize the old school Clark guys to do a little more. You wouldn't think it was this way, but like the U22 initiative, for example, is actually an attempt to get those guys to spend a little more because it allows them to take shots on younger dudes that you would flip for profit without hitting your cap as hard. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like it really isn't, but it has this incentive in it of if you fill your DP spots, you get more U22 spots to try and push you to fill your DP spots. So there's definitely these two schools going head to head in the league. And I'm sure that when Clark sees these numbers flying, that he's calling Garber and being like, dude, you cannot let this get out of hand because this league, we already saved this league once. My family did, and I'm not doing it again, So I think that it's for sure that what the hell is going on. And this, I actually think it's one of the reasons why some of the national media don't like Dallas, because particularly like the younger ones who think the whole league should spend way more than it does. Those guys all don't like Dallas because the owners won't spend any money. So I think that's actually why you see sometimes really media pushback against FC Dallas or ignoring them or considering them not important or whatever. So, yeah.
Well, it was funny. Our good friend and the original fan, Dustin Chrisman, was giving Andrew Weedeby some crap the other day because over at his article at MLSsoccer.com, Andrew had written an article kind of recapping every team's season, and essentially he wrote like a 5-word, 1-sentence review for Dallas, and Dustin gave him crap. And while I agree with Dustin for saying, hey, couldn't you give us 2 sentences? In my opinion, I think that is the greatest indicator that MLS headquarters essentially has just given up on the Hunts in terms of expecting anything out of them. I think they appreciate their family importance to the league and the value that they bring in terms of being some sort of balancer towards these other owners that you're speaking of. But yeah. I think that they just see, look, if you're not going to make any attempt to do anything, then we're not going to burn our time trying to help you do it.
Yeah, they're certainly not going to sell you as a positive for the league. I definitely think that, Clark's position as unofficially the sort of leader of these guys that don't want to spend like crazy, I think that gives him a lot of weight, and his position in the NFL gives him a whole lot of weight. Mm-hmm. So when he does call, I'm sure that Garber listens. But I think you're 100% right that in terms of marketing or media or promotions, they're basically going to ignore FC Dallas. I don't think it's a coincidence that FC Dallas has no English language national TV games this year. Right? It's not a coincidence.
Right. Yeah.
It's not just because they're bad. It's like they haven't had those games for a couple of years now. I can't remember the last time they actually had any. So even if they had 1 or 2, it's still not very many compared to like Seattle, who's probably on national TV like every other weekend. So, there's definitely we're just going to set you over here in the corner because we got to have people fill up the game schedule. So we're going to keep you around and we appreciate what you did, but don't expect us to make a big deal about you. Beyond the fact that you, of course, provide like half the national team.
It's fun. Yeah, it's weird because the FC Dallas, the MLS club, is really nothing to talk about. But this week, you wrote an article over on your website that kind of reviewed the players in the academy that you were kind of, I think you called it the hot list. What did you call it?
It's called the hot list. It's
list.
It's recent guys that for whatever reason have caught my attention. Basically, it's like dudes I wanted to talk about.
Right.
It's not the same as like who I think is going to get signed.
Okay.
It's just
fun. Here's
Yeah.
my point. And here's my point tying into your point that FC Dallas is only on like no English broadcast national games this year. If there was a channel of academy team play, FC Dallas teams are almost always a must watch. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like out of all
Yeah.
the MLS clubs playing in the academy, which one, when you see a schedule of teams playing, which one are you like, oh yeah, I want to watch that one?
Yeah, when they stream academy games from the combines or the showcases or the GA Cup or whatever, they always pick a couple of or two or three FC Dallas games. Just like they'll pick Red Bulls and NYCFC and Philly. Like the really good academies noted for those, like 3 or 4 or 5 of them that are noted for being great. They picked those, and Dallas was always at the very top of that list of teams they would showcase. You know, and the guys that they would get to do the games would know all about the very best guys coming through. They know, you know, so it's a totally different. You know, it's a shame that there's not the same sort of carryover, and maybe we have to hope that someday it is. The problem is, and you know this, there's too much money for the very best guys. You cannot keep them. You can't afford it. And you're going to get accused of wrecking Pepe's career if you try and keep him. As much as like everyone here that's a Dallas fan is like, come on, keep these guys. Let's win some stuff. And everyone that's not an FC Dallas fan is, screw you, sell them. You're wrecking the national team. Even though, like, as you say, like a third of the national team's FC Dallas already.
Yeah.
So, you know, it would be wonderful if someday they could keep all these dudes and win a bunch of games, but so far they can't. The money's just not there yet, you know, or the punts don't want to spend it, whichever one it is.
Yeah, it's really easy to have a negative and foreboding vibe about the 2022 season for Dallas. You know, history tells us that coaches come in like this, and with the amount of roster changes going to be, it's just very rare do teams, even in Major League Soccer, just suddenly, you know, turn on the Jets and become serious contenders. Now, teams will improve, that's for sure, but not in first-year deals. So I think we're all, I think, at least I am, I'm prepared for another kind of middling season, and, you know, I think the hope is but again, until we get past the transfer window and we have any real sense about what Nico as a coach is like I have just zero sense as to what his skill sets are, what he likes or doesn't like to do. I have no idea what his substitutions are like or his in-game management. Is he a stand on the sideline and scream at everybody like Lucci was, or is he a quiet guy, you know, and just watches the game and talks during halftime and before and after? Those are all the things that are so TBD. I almost feel guilty for just assuming it's going to be a shitty season.
Yeah, for a team that operates on the budget that Dallas has, there's 2 ways to go about next season for me at a macro level. One is to try and really quickly fix the defense, duct tape together a defense. And if you keep Pepe and keep that same offense, those 2 things will get you back into the playoffs. Fix the defense, you know, short term with some veteran signing kind of guys, you're fine. Well, the better idea potentially in terms of actually winning a championship might be to double down on the academy and give the really talented 20-year-olds that you have right now, of which you have like 4 or 5, let them play in for 3 seasons. And you're going to have to eat a turd for 3 seasons. But that's the way you get really top tier talent without spending $5 million per season contracts like Toronto does. So those are the 2 options.
Try 11.
Oh, is that what it is? 11?
Yeah,
whatever it is, man.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, the point even more made, right, is like Dallas is not doing that. So either you can just try and put a Band-Aid on it and get back to, quote, in the playoffs and competing, blah, blah, as if, right? Or you can really try and double down the academy and really develop guys for 3 years and see if that gets you to the top tiers of the league. Those are the only ways to do it now on a budget. You know, to do what Philly did and what Nashville's doing, these slow 3-year builds of getting your roster right. Nashville's doing it with internal to the league players. You know, Philly's doing it with their academy. Which way are you going to do it? Or you're just going to try and slap a Band-Aid on the thing and get back to what Dallas has been doing, which is 4th through 7th for the last decade, you know?
Yeah.
In the playoffs, but not really competing.
Here's the other scenario for the 22 season that you should consider. And I think we've mentioned it before, but we haven't thought about it too much. But it would be the most FC Dallas end result for the Ricardo Pepi story, which is he actually does stay in the January window, start the season, and then get sold in July. Halfway through the season, and he starts hot and he's scoring goals and everybody loves him, and now they're selling him for even more money, and he goes to some hoop-de-doo club, but he's gone in July and the whole season's shot.
Yeah, he scores 15 goals in 15 games, and you get to the summer window when European teams have more money than they do now, and so you get your $15 million or whatever the hell it is you want, and he's gone, and you go from fourth place to cratering out of the playoffs over the back half of the season.
Yeah.
That would be very FC Dallas.
Yeah.
Hashtag bug skill.
Yeah. It kind of would. All right. Well, there we go. I don't think we got much else to talk about, Buzzard.
Well, there's going to be more to talk about when we actually see some training or we actually get to talk to a coach or we actually see a couple of moves come in. In the meantime, we're going to do a lot of planning and speculating.
Has anybody from the club contacted you and offered you an opportunity to talk to the coach?
No, but I this is the kind of thing where because it's a holiday and because it's the off season, I bet you that all the people that would actually occur to them to do that kind of thing, which is not very many, I'm sure they're all on vacation. So come the new year, maybe somebody might.
3 weeks ago, he was named head coach.
I know, but then it was Christmas and it's think about it, those people have to work during the season crazy hours all the time. So when it comes to the off season, they all kind of just tune out and check out until it's there's been cases where they've signed a person and it's taken a week and a half for the team to announce it and put out the pictures and the video and all that crap. It's just not shocking to me that right now there's nothing happening in terms of PR and media front. Hopefully between now and camp or even right at the start of camp, obviously, because I'll go out there, I'll get a chance to talk to him, and find out more about him. And even if it's only watching training, I'll find out more about him, find out what kind of coach he is.
Okay. Whatever. Okay. Anything else, Buzz?
I honestly can't think of anything other than just to promote, supporting us with the Patreon and the Discord. And I did get a chance to do some Academy stuff, which I think is super fun. So y'all should check that out if you haven't. And
oh yeah, your hot list article is so educational, informative, and the best part about it is, Buzz, it really is a bright, shiny, hopeful thing to glom onto if you're a fan of this club when you're kind of worried or concerned about the thing that we all normally worry and concern ourselves with. The fact that there is so much cool young product coming up from the Academy is a side thing that is always great to be able to cling on to.
Yeah, and if you go back a little bit further, I did a most likely homegrown signings, and I did a who's who at the start of the season, which was in August. Those are all still very relevant in terms of the Academy. And in case you haven't followed us enough on Twitter, there is a homegrown player signed. It just has not been announced. Whether there's because this is maybe something I haven't talked about in the podcast. Because the MLS 2 now exists, that North Texas moved into that league. That means that contracts are now held by MLS. So now there's even more of a singular organization, North Texas to FC Dallas. And you can sign a contract that includes both things. So there has been an Academy player signed. It's not announced. I can't say who it is. I've suggested who I think it is because I don't know for sure, but I'm 90% sure I know. And I've talked about it many times. Breadcrumb
Buzz.
Yeah. Well, it's Antonio Clara, who's the keeper, the U19 keeper, who spent 3 months in the first team. I don't know for sure. I'm just 90% sure it's him. I do know for sure there is a signing, whether it's one of these combined deals or what, I'm not 100% sure about that kind of level of detail. That's going to be interesting to me to learn how it all works.
Yeah.
But there is one of those coming. So that's fun. If you're into homegrowns, it's, there's some little things percolating with the Academy, with the North Texas that'll be really fascinating if you're into North Texas at all, because they only have 4 players left from last season. It's another complete reload. The window there is very, very small. So whatever coach they do hire is going to have to do a whole lot of talent scouting and roster building. Maybe there'll be more Academy than usual involved. Maybe there'll be more FC Dallas coming down than before because of this new connectivity. So fun to watch. Be fascinating.
All right. Third Degree, the podcast, is brought to you by Soccer 90. Soccer 90 is your source for all things U.S. national team, FC Dallas, MLS, and international club gear. Jerseys, scarves, tees, keychains, bumper stickers, everything they got. All Third Degree listeners get 25% off their order when they use the code Third Degree at checkout at soccer90.com. Buzz, I hope you had a wonderful holiday season, and I hope you have a happy new year.
I did have a wonderful holiday season, and hopefully I will too. And same to you. I hope you had a nice holiday as well.
Thank you. And thank you, FC Dallas Curious fan. I hope you know that we really do appreciate your patronage of Buzz's Patreon account, downloading and streaming this podcast. As they always say, without you, there would not be this. So happy New Year to each and every one of you. We will speak to you next week on another episode in the new year of Third Degree, the podcast.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast.